Hi, I'm April.
And I am Missy, and this is Sheelanagig. Awesome. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. Welcome. We really appreciate you listening. And of course, each week we present and explore our own Sheelanagig, a woman whose strength and perseverance has led her to greatness, who empowers us, inspires us, and maybe even someone that, you never heard of, that should, or never got the credit that she deserved. But, we're hoping to enlighten you a little bit. It might be somebody you have heard about, but maybe you're going to learn a little bit more too. These are all women that just need to be recognized, and we're just grateful that you're here today. Thank you for joining us. April,
Yes.
What's up?
Well, do you remember our very first podcast, which we actually screwed up?
Yes.
It was on Madam C.J. Walker.
Yes, I remember. We came to the table with the exact same woman.
Right.
By
We were
accident.
supposed to surprise each other and bring somebody, and we showed up with the same Sheela.
Great minds think alike, April. Great minds think alike, right? Yeah.
Right. Well, the other night, my husband and I were trying to figure out something to watch, and we had Netflix open, and I couldn't help myself.
You watched it.
We are watching it.
Oh.
It is a series called Self-Made, based, and I use the term loosely, on Madam C.J. Walker's life. And one of the things we were able to highlight in our very first podcast was the inaccuracies that Netflix kind of spinned into what was on its own merit a great story.
Yes.
So I'm having the best time because we've watched 2 episodes, and my husband will watch the whole episode, get so into it, and then I would tell him everything that didn't happen.
So awesome.
Yeah.
And it's true. And I feel a little bit bad because I mean, it's kind of a two-edged sword there. Because on one hand, it's great that she got a Netflix special and that she's, being recognized in the way she should be recognized. But again, like April said, it's sad that a lot of it is untrue and that they've just Hollywoodized it and made it into this tale. They took a lot. It was very gratuitous in that. But it's funny because sometimes when I tell people about our podcast and, say, oh, we just, released our first episode or whatever, or listened to our first episode. And people will be like, oh, yeah, I know Madam C.J. Walker. I saw the Netflix special. And then I can't help myself but to say, okay, then you need to listen to her podcast because it really did not do her justice. And in fact, her great-great-granddaughter, Alelia Beals, I believe is her name,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Was not very happy about it.
No, but there's a silver lining because isn't she writing her own script? And
Yes.
I think she sold it. And I think another more accurate series or movie will be coming out, and her great-great-granddaughter is not going to fabricate and screw it up.
Right.
So that kind of makes me feel a little bit
Yeah,
better.
I remember her quote was something like, I thought this was going to be like Hidden Figures, and then it turned out to be the housewives of Atlanta or something.
Right, something like that.
Yeah, so.
Kind of summed it up.
Yeah. But how are you doing though? Are you good?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I went to the eye doctor this morning. I was a little scared because I have eye issues.
You do?
And,
Is everything okay?
Everything's a-okay. Everything's a-okay, but I was just a little worried. And and we're just hanging out. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too.
Yeah, I always love when April comes over. We do the podcast. It's so much fun.
I know, and I'm so excited about my Sheela.
Yay! I'm excited about your Sheela. Wait, should we do a little drum roll?
Yay! Okay, I'm going to be anticlimactic. Okay, I want you to fill in the blank. This is a test. For the next 30 seconds, we will see if Missy knows her childhood rhymes. Ready?
Yes.
Rich man, poor man, beggar man, thief, doctor, lawyer,
Indian chief.
Very good!
Oh, I pulled that out of my butt.
Well,
Yeah.
good job, because our Sheela for today is a lady known as Wilma Mankiller.
Wait, is that really her name?
Yes.
Wilma Mankiller.
Mankiller, yeah. And just to clarify a few things about her name, not only is she a Cherokee woman, but she is the first and to date the only female chief of the Cherokee Nation, or she was.
Oh, that is That is super cool.
Isn't that super cool?
Yes.
But before I get to how she became the first female chief and so far the only chief of the Cherokee Nation, I just want to tell you a little bit about her name because it's kind of funny.
Yes, it is kind of funny. I might have to change my name to Mankiller. I don't know. Missy Mankiller?
Missy Mankiller. Whoa, that sounds pretty intimidating. I'm getting nervous. All right. But in Cherokee language, Mankiller actually stands for like military rank, and it's a high rank, like a captain or a major. But Wilma was very, I don't know, how would I say this, humble?
Okay.
She didn't walk around going, hey, I'm the chief. You know,
Right.
most people called her Wilma.
Okay.
But one day she was going to give a talk in another state, and some guy picked her up, and he was a little patronizing and condescending. And he asked Wilma what he could call her since chief was a male term.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Really?
can you believe
Really?
that?
Ugh, that's so ridiculous.
So at first she ignored him. She didn't answer. And he kept going on. He started making up things like, should I call you Chiefette?
Oh,
You know,
Chiefette, Chiefess.
Chiefess. Yeah, you got the idea. He was
yeah.
being really an asshole and being patronizing,
Yes.
right? So she turned to him and she said, you can call me by my surname. It's Mankiller.
Oh, so good.
And apparently the dude was a little intimidated.
Hopefully
by
that
the
shut him
name.
up. Hopefully that just shut him the fuck up, right? Right?
So anyway, mostly Wilma was called Wilma.
Like Wilma Flintstone. Right?
Wilma
Maybe
Flintstone.
that's where Wilma Flintstone got her name. I don't know.
I don't know, but I can't wait to share a little bit about Ms. Mankiller.
Yes.
She was born on November 18th, 1945 in Toliloquay, Oklahoma. And what was significant about Toliloquay, Oklahoma is that was Cherokee Nation land.
Okay.
And apparently she was the sixth of 11 kids.
Oh my God.
So the Mankillers were very
even
prolific.
I
They had a
guess,
lot of
yeah.
kids. And she said of her childhood, she didn't realize that she was poor. She didn't feel poor. They had no electricity. They had no running water. But for her, her life was rich because she loved the land, and she really identified with the land and being a Cherokee and the pride that she took in the Cherokee culture. And those things were so important to her, she didn't feel like she was going without.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Also, no electricity and no plumbing and no telephones, none of that stuff.
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, that's crazy.
So something happened to her when she was 11 that was sort of the beginning of just sort of the trajectory of her whole life. Her father moved the whole family to San Francisco under something that was called the Bureau of Indian Affairs Relocation Policy.
Oh, I know about that policy. I know. Oh no. I know. I mean, I know it was really hard for a lot of Native families because they moved them. They promised them these great jobs. A home. They had these advertisements. Come settle in, raise your family here, make money.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of them maybe went well, but I think the majority of them they suffered. I mean, they culture shock. And
Definitely culture
just
shock. Yeah.
the jobs they were promised that didn't turn out, and they ended up suddenly being in a city not around.
That was a big point.
Not supported.
Yeah, that was a big point for Wilma Mankiller because they were moved to urban areas. She was moved to San Francisco, and they moved them to low-income housing, ghetto housing, and so here she was so tied to the land, tied to this rural open field and nature, and suddenly she was living in like an urban jungle.
Oh my gosh.
And she called that relocation her personal Trail of Tears.
Aww.
Trail of Tears was actually a term that was used in the 1930s when the government had a forced removal of Cherokees from Southeast, and their ancestors had to relocate from their Indian territory in Tennessee.
Oh my gosh.
And so it was a term, Trail of Tears. It was a term of just grief of being plucked out of their own environment and community.
Oh.
But the Bureau of Indian Affairs had several relocation policies, and as I mentioned, it was voluntary, and it did promise jobs and housing. And for Mankiller's father, who had 11 mouths to
Oh
feed
my God.
and was not doing well financially, he did get a job with the union and he became a union lead. And I'm going to talk a little
Oh,
bit more,
that's great.
yeah, about the family and how, I don't know if they acclimated, but how they adjusted
Yeah.
in San Francisco in a little bit. But I just sort of have a little side note, if
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah, please.
The guy who conceptualized this relocation program was the very same dude who thought up the internment for the
Oh
Japanese during World
no.
War II.
Oh God. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Didn't he already cause enough damage?
Apparently not. After World War II, he didn't have a job, so the government ended up making him the head of Bureau Indian Affairs. And his vision was the same, to break up communities and break up families. And Mankiller was very aware from an early age that the way the government saw the Indian culture and the Indian people was as the Indian problem and how to address the Indian problem.
That's so sad. That's just so messed up. Oh my God. That just makes me so mad.
Yeah, so they ended up in a housing project in San Francisco that was flatteringly sometimes called Harlem West. And a lot of the same people who went out on that relocation program found themselves stuck in very poor urban households. So I mentioned her dad became a warehouse worker for the union, and they had a community center, and the Cherokee people gravitated to the community center to keep alive some semblance of the culture. And interestingly enough, I don't know a lot about her life until she was 24.
Okay.
But except she got married when she was 17. She married Hector Hugo Olea de Bardi, if you can say that.
Wow. Good name. Good name.
Hugo Olea de Bardi. He was an Ecuador college student, and they moved to Oakland and had two daughters. But what really, really got her started was when she was 24 years old. And like I said, she was involved in this Cherokee Community Center. And it was 1969. And you may recall this, a group of American Indians overtook the federal penitentiary on Alcatraz Island.
Yes. Yes, that's an incredible story. That is an incredible story, for sure.
It is. And they were claiming, the group claimed the right of discovery, which was a term that was associated with the original inhabitants of the continent. They argued under this idea that they had the historical right to the land, even though it was under federal government, because they were the original inhabitants.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
It wasn't the first time they took control over Alcatraz, but it was, I believe, the longest and the most effective.
It's so rad. I mean, it's so awesome. Like, if
What do
you
you
read about
remember
that,
from it?
I just remember it was long.
Yes.
And the government really couldn't do anything. And it was like 18 months or something.
It was
crazy.
17 months. Yep.
Yeah. And I just loved it. They came in, and other people joined as well, if I remember properly. Not just Native Americans, but like a lot of people got involved. And
Well, so Mankiller's family got involved
Yeah.
in supporting them. They weren't actually on Alcatraz,
Okay.
but they were supporting them first through protesting and demonstrations. But Wilma Mankiller got involved with logistics, making sure that supplies were delivered to the island so that the people that were occupying the islands, the natives that were occupying the island, had the food and whatever supplies they needed to keep the occupation going.
Right.
She was really riveted by this effort. It like woke her up. She thought this was a great way to call attention to the plight of the American Indians
Yeah.
and how unfairly and unjustly they were being treated.
Absolutely. It's so rogue,
Yeah.
It's just like so rebellious. It's so rogue, but it's so, pertinent and poignant. I mean, it's amazing that they did that.
It's true. And then the Native Americans originally were doing this as a symbolic gesture, but what they really wanted was to establish a Native American university and cultural center on the island. And as time went on and the occupation was going on and on, they were actually negotiating to have that happen, and the government was stymied to shut it down.
Wow.
At one point, this is fun, the occupants offered to purchase the island for the symbolic price of $24, paid in glass beads and red cloth to sort of mirror what they said the price was to buy Manhattan. Sounds fair.
Yeah, same price as Manhattan. Wow. Oh my gosh.
Unfortunately, in early 1970s, in January, the Indian occupation did begin to fall apart. First of all, the students who made up a large number of the protesters occupying the island had to go back to school. They had to go back to college, right? And so the people that replaced them, and I think you were sort of alluding to this, were a combination of Indians who really weren't involved in the initial movement and didn't have, I don't know whether it was the commitment to the effort or the understanding of how to occupy and hold the land, but they weren't as effective. And also some of the San Francisco hippies of the day who were like into drugs and, you know, not really there for this
Alcatraz.
Yeah, hey,
come on, let's do Alcatraz.
Let's do Alcatraz. Well, they didn't do a great job of holding the island. So the whole effort was starting to dwindle. It was losing its impact, and the government basically was successful in waiting them out.
Right.
But the final blow was pretty tragic. On January 5th, the leader, John Oakes, had a 13-year-old stepdaughter on the island, and she fell 3 floors down a stairwell to her death.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that was
so
pretty,
sad.
that was so tragic.
13.
Yeah.
Poor little girl. That's terrible.
It was terrible. And then Oakes was done. He left the island, and pretty soon thereafter, the whole occupation fell apart.
Wow.
I think there were about 3 different occupations, but that particular one that Mankiller got involved in supporting was the longest and most impactful. And for her, it just ignited her. Like, it really told her what she wanted to do. And she became really dedicated to doing things in her life and in her career that empowered Native communities, first in San Francisco and California. And so she took a job as the director of Oakland's Native American Youth Center. And she really just wanted to restore what she thought of as Native pride in, you know, a spiraling kind of urban environment where it was easy for Native youth to just forget their culture and forget their roots.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But she was also a go-getter.
Mm-hmm.
So she played a significant role in the Pit River tribe's legal fight against PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric.
Oh, go girl. Yep.
Yeah,
pretty rad.
Yeah, because by this time she had learned a few things about Native American treaty rights.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was helping support the case by really going in depth and taking a deep dive about clarifying treaty rights in the lawsuit. And she raised awareness, and she provided a lot of expertise navigating battles that were related to tribal sovereignty.
Very cool.
And as a result of her efforts and others who really fought this case, the natives achieved a very significant victory. They secured the return of hundreds of acres of ancestral lands from the Bernie Gardens area.
That's amazing.
Yeah, in Bernie, California.
And rightfully so.
Yep. And as part of a court-ordered settlement, PG&E had to transfer tribal land ownership with conservation easements that ensure the preservation and public access of that land.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
Yeah. So the next thing I'm just a little foggy on, I couldn't find a lot. But the next thing that happened was that Mankiller left San Francisco with her 2 daughters and without her husband. She divorced Hector Hugo Olea DeBardi.
Gotcha. No.
I don't know why. But she moved back to Oklahoma because she wanted to be back in her native Cherokee land.
Wow.
Her Trail of Tears was something she never really got over.
Right.
And she really wanted to make sure that she dedicated her life not only to the Cherokee Nation and supporting the Cherokee Nation, but living in that environment.
So her daughters kind of had the opposite experience. They started out in this urban,
yeah,
you know, and this urban area, and then she went back to her native land, and they got to experience her native land, you know?
Exactly.
That's amazing. That's cool.
So when she got back to the Cherokee Nation, she founded a community development department with the Cherokee Nation, and she was focused on improving. She got involved very quickly in the issue of getting access to water and housing. And her very first project was in Bell, Oklahoma. This is a really small Cherokee community. It only had like 200 families.
Mm-hmm.
And they had no running water, high unemployment, and just this persistent or prevailing sense of disempowerment. And so Mankiller focused on working for the common good, and she got the entire community involved. And that enabled the residents to construct a 16-mile water line over historic record-breaking 14-month period.
That's so cool. Again, go man killer.
Yeah.
Go man killer. That's amazing.
She was great. You know that saying, get shit done?
Yeah, I was just thinking that if you want something to get done, you let a woman do it. Isn't that what they say? Right?
Yep, she got shit done. And there's actually a full-length feature film about that particular project called the Cherokee Word for Water. And while Mankiller was recruiting, that was a sweat. But while Mankiller was recruiting volunteers for the waterline effort, she happened to meet and marry a Cherokee citizen named Charlie Soap. And there's this cute story about their names because they decided they're going to get married, and there was a little discussion about whose name are we going to take.
Right.
And in the end, they decided they would both keep their own name, and she said, so he kept his maiden name and I kept mine.
Oh, I love that. Wait, so S-O? So or
Soap, S-O-A-P.
Oh, soap. Okay, got it. Because
Yeah,
I was gonna
Charlie
say
Soap.
I was gonna say if they had the hyphenated, it could be like so man killer.
Woo!
So man killer.
Yes.
But if it's soap man killer,
They're
it's
not the
as,
same.
No. I kept my maiden name and my husband kept his maiden name, so I can relate to that.
Well, that's funny because I took my husband's name, Grossinger, and my daughter said, can't we just change it back to your maiden name, which is Braverman? She thought that was a better name.
Oh, Braverman is a cool name.
It is a cool name.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't get married till I was 41. There was no way I was going to change my name. And, my husband was like totally fine with that. He did not care. Although his parents were a little irked by it, which I thought was kind of funny. But.
Yeah, I changed my name because we knew we were planning on having kids, and I thought we should all have the same name.
See, that's what makes it that's what I thought. It makes it easier with the kids. I had a friend, and she had 2 kids, and she and her husband both kept their last names, and then they gave one kid her last name and one kid his last name.
I have a friend who did the same thing.
That's kind of cool too.
That is kind of cool.
And
that was really nice.
It did cross my mind, but
it keeps the lineage of the family names going.
It's true.
So that's pretty cool. But Soap, S-O-A-P, I'd keep Mankiller.
Yeah, I would too.
I would have taken Mankiller if I were him, but obviously he didn't feel the same way.
She's a man killer. Isn't there a song about that?
Well, man eater.
Oh. Here she comes. Watch out, boy. She'll chew you up.
All right. Okay, so moving right along. Mankiller went to work for directly for the Cherokee Nation in 1977, and interestingly enough, she really didn't want to work for them, but it was the only place where she could get a job, so she took it. And when she went to work for the Cherokee Nation, there were 0, and as in no, 0 minus 1 female executives.
Oh my gosh.
And when she came, she didn't necessarily have the idea or thought that she would rise to chief. She came with this vision. She just had this driven vision that her own people, the Cherokee people, could solve their own problems. And that she just came to build programs that would empower and embolden the Cherokee people to get involved in their own lives and make their own lives better. And a funny thing happened as she began to develop these programs. And that is, they started bringing in money.
Wow.
She increased revenue for the tribe, and as she was increasing revenue, it so happens the hierarchy of the Cherokee Nation got interested in her.
Take a little note.
Yeah. So she began to move up the ranks and became the first executive. And she really attributes her ability to get shit done and build effective programs from way back in California when she was supporting the protesters on Alcatraz.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she really credits that Alcatraz occupation as sort of defining where she was headed in her life.
Hmm.
So she began rising up and she was elected as Cherokee Nation's principal chief in 1985. And she served as chief for 10 years. But um, a couple of things before I go back to how she got elected, which is an interesting story. I just want to say that under her leadership, she more than doubled the Cherokee Nation population.
Oh my gosh, she
It
is sick.
Yeah, she went from 68,000 to 170,000.
Mankiller is sick.
Yeah. And she revitalized the tribal government, advocated for improving education and healthcare and housing. And under her leadership, infant mortality declined and educational achievement rose.
Wow.
And like I said, she was very humble. She basically said, people today, ask me what they should call me, and people called her Wilma. She was a consensus builder. She brought people together, and she was credited, as much as she wanted the American government out of the tribe's business, she was really credited with helping the government pilot a self-government agreement with the Cherokee Nation. So she worked with the government to gain more sovereignty for the Cherokee people.
Wow. Wow.
And she was
Did she ever run for president?
She didn't run for
She
president.
should have run for president.
Well, it was hard running for chief.
You're
I'll
right.
get there.
What am I thinking? Right.
But she was also a fierce guardian of centuries of Cherokee tradition and customs. Because again, even as she modernized the nation, expanded it, and made improvement and built its annual budget to 150 million over her tenure, which was pretty huge.
That is pretty huge.
She never lost sight of the traditions, the culture, the foundation and roots of the Cherokee Nation.
Awesome.
But and she said that going back to when she was in Alcatraz, she learned how to do paralegal work. She learned a lot about the law. And back then, when she was in the ghettos of San Francisco, she was encouraged to go to college. And nobody in her family ever went to college before. And nobody in Hunter Point, the housing project where she had lived, went to college. But there was one woman, and it was a Claremont woman, so one of those do-gooder, let me save you and help you people, that really saw she had leadership potential. And she saw beyond as she called it, the ghetto kid. And she talked her into going to college. And she went to college under EOP, which is Equal Opportunity Program. And that was how she did it. So she originally attended Skyline College in San Francisco. And then she went on to San Francisco State University. And then later she enrolled in Flaming Rainbow University in Oklahoma, where she earned a bachelor's degree in social sciences.
Flaming Rainbow?
Flaming Rainbow, because she went back to her roots.
Right. I can't believe there's a school called Flaming Rainbow.
There is. And then she took on additional graduate courses in University of Arkansas. So going back to that early beginning where she felt so stripped of her culture and nature and all that birthright, she did really learn how to, as we say, get shit done, get an education, and all that kind of stuff. She said, what I learned from my experience in living in a community of almost all African American people, and what I learned from experience in living in my own community in Oklahoma before the relocation, is that poor people have a much, much greater capacity for solving their own problems than most people give them credit for. And I can't begin to tell you how many well-meaning social workers I've come across try to save me during my life. Wow. And so although she did credit somebody outside of the nation to inspire her to get an education, she really, really was, I can't say enough about how dedicated she was and respectful she was to the foundation of what was the Cherokee Nation.
Yeah.
So anyway, she's rising up the ranks.
Well, and just to go back to being like solving your own problems, you kind of have to be a problem solver because unfortunately, and I think it's still an issue today, when you're suffering with poverty, there's just not a lot of resources.
Right.
And so you have to learn how to do things yourself. You have to become very resourceful. So
Absolutely.
I see exactly what she's saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's a badass. So anyway, she's rising up the ranks, and she ran for chief in 1983. And no one, and I mean no one, thought she was going to win, including Mankiller herself.
Ah.
But she's a real optimist. I mean, this part of her story really just inspires me. First of all, she expected people to challenge her, but what she thought they would challenge her is on her background, because all she'd ever been really was an activist and somebody who advocated for grassroots democracy. She ran agencies and she developed programs, but she felt that her own resume was a little flimsy for chief.
Mm.
But the opposition she faced whenever she would go to a debate or go to talk about people had nothing to do with anything except her being female.
Of course.
It's the only thing that people wanted
Of
to
course.
discuss.
This is not surprising at all, unfortunately.
It did
No?
surprise her. And she said it was the most hurtful experience she had ever been through.
Aw, poor Wilma.
So, yeah. So, anyway, it turns out she was friends with Gloria Steinem.
Gloria Steinem.
Gloria Steinem. I know that you have a great Gloria Steinem story, which I hope you'll share with us. But at that time, Gloria Steinem was head of Ms. Magazine, and she went to Ms. Magazine and Gloria Steinem hoping that in her campaign they would feed her some kind of witty, funny line that would dismiss once and for all the novelty of her being a woman. Because she didn't want to talk about being a woman.
Right.
She wanted to talk about the issues and problems of the Cherokee Nation.
Of course.
So Ms. Magazine did disappoint her because they came back with something more serious, and that wasn't the vibe. She didn't want to give it energy. She wanted to be more dismissive, kind of like, you see sometimes Kamala Harris dismissing Trump and saying he's not a serious man.
Right.
She didn't want to give too much credence to people that were getting into her being a woman. She wanted a joke and just to be able to ignore it. So when Ms. Magazine didn't deliver a great line, she decided to ignore it and continue on, and she found, interestingly enough, inspiration in the back of a tea box in 1983.
Wow.
Yes, don't we all get our inspiration from tea boxes? It said something like, "Don't ever argue with a fool, because someone walking by and observing you can't tell which one is the fool."
Oh, that's great.
So she just decided, she was just going to ignore it and carry on. So she didn't really know a lot about politics. So she decides, well, politicians hold rallies, right?
Right.
So she decided, I'll hold a rally and have a reception with a dinner. So she got all this food together and they advertised on the radio, and she was expecting hordes of people. And when it was time for the rally, she goes out there and she said about 5 people showed up, and she thinks 3 of them were members of her own family.
Oh.
Now, you and I might feel crushed. We might think,
we already know the outcome.
We do. We do know the outcome.
So she was pleasantly surprised, perhaps?
She was pleasantly surprised, but first she had to take a lot of hits. And what she decided was, when the going gets tough, kind of the tough get going. And so she kept going out there and believing with her whole heart she was going to lose. She just kept on campaigning, talking to people, ignoring the issue. And in 1983, she did win the election and she did become chief. And her success earned her national recognition in Ms. Magazine. In 1987, she was Woman of the Year at Ms. Magazine.
Awesome.
And she was inducted.
Well deserved.
Very well deserved. Hard won and well deserved. And, considering all the people that just thought she couldn't ever do it, it was a real feat. She was actually inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame in 1993. And in 1998, she received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor, and she received it from President Bill Clinton.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Very cool.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, she's amazing.
If anybody wants to know more about Wilma Mankiller, she does have an autobiography, Mankiller, A Chief of Her People. It was published in 1993. And this is kind of a cool story. She was once asked to send a pair of shoes to an American Indian art exhibit, and she ended up sending a very ordinary pair of walking shoes claiming they were the normal shoes that she wore every day. She passed away on April 6, 2010, at the age of 64.
Oh my God, she died so
I
young.
know, that's my age right now.
What happened?
She died of pancreatic cancer. But on a very uplifting or moving note, her funeral was attended by women rights activist and close friend Gloria Steinem and Governor of Oklahoma Brad Henry. President Barack Obama said about her, as the Cherokee Nation's first female chief, she transformed the nation-to-nation relationships between the Cherokee Nation and the federal government and served as an inspiration to women in Indian country and across America.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, I just love her. I can't wait to go look her up and find out more and see her picture on the cover of Ms. Magazine.
I know.
And we got to post that.
And before I have you share with us your personal Gloria Steinem story, I just want to say one more thing about Gloria Steinem. She was at her side when Mankiller, as they use the phrase, walked on. And she said of her friend, ancient traditions call for setting signal fires to lighten the way home for the Great One. And fires were lit in 23 countries after Wilma's death. The millions she touched will continue her work, but I will miss her every day of my life.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful?
That is beautiful. I love that.
I do too. Thank you for letting me share her today.
I'm so glad you did. I feel very inspired. Like I just go down, I get inspired and then I just want to go look them up and read about them and see if there's books that I can get or see if there's TV shows or movies that have been made. I find this whole thing so inspiring.
Hey, Missy, now that we've talked about my Sheela, I have to circle back. You have an amazing Gloria Steinem story, and could you please share it with us?
I do. All right. Many years ago, I don't know how many, but it was Gloria Steinem's 80th birthday. And at that time, I was doing some catering and bartending and different kind of resourceful.
And can I interrupt you for just one second? Because for the sake of our younger listeners, why don't you say who Gloria Steinem was?
Okay, so first of all, April, you tell everybody who Gloria Steinem is.
Well, she was an amazing feminist in the 1970s. She really led a lot of the women's movement and inspired a lot of women to go out and pursue careers and burn their bras and proclaim their independence from men. And she founded a magazine, as we were talking about, Ms. Magazine, which was really about women empowerment and women leading their own lives. So it occurred to me that maybe some of our listeners aren't as clear about who
and
she
maybe
was.
some of our listeners have watched I think it's called Ms. America. It's that special on Netflix.
I haven't seen it. I need to watch
it's
it.
So good. It was very well done. Just about women's rights and that time and Gloria Steinem and Shirley Chisholm, it's really powerful.
Wow.
Yeah. We watched it with my teenage son too, and he loved it as well. So
great.
Very good, very good. I recommend it. But anyway, I'll just tell you my Gloria Steinem story, which April has heard before. So this is many years ago. I don't know how many years ago, but it was Gloria Steinem's 80th birthday. And at the time, I was doing a lot of bartending and catering gigs with my friend Danny, and we got this great gig where we were going to be, the head bartenders for Gloria Steinem's 80th birthday party. And we were pinching ourselves. We were like, oh my God. And we were just thrilled. We just couldn't believe we were going to have this experience. And we went there and we set up our bar. We were all ready. And there were, a couple other bartenders. We were the head bartenders. So we were kind of figuring out where everybody, would be. And, we had two separate bars set up outside so people could come up and get their drinks. So anyway, beforehand though, they had this little meet and greet, like a little, cocktail hour before they opened into the backyard where the big festivities were. So they sent me in, or I was sent in. They said, you could bring in some cocktails. I said, okay, I'm going to do that. I had my tray, filled with, like 8 cocktails, right? And I have them all on this tray and I go, and people start taking them and then, I'm out of cocktails, so I go back to get more cocktails.
I know where this is going.
Yeah, and this guard cuts me off and he says, ma'am, you can't go out there. I said, no, what do you mean? No, I have to go out there. The bar is out there. He's like, yeah, I have strict instructions to leave these doors locked. Nobody can go out until the ceremony begins. I said, no, I have to go to the bar. I am serving drinks. I'm sorry. There's nothing you can do. So, I call Danny. I say, Mayday, Danny, Mayday. I need cocktails in here fast. And people see me with my empty tray. They're like, where are the cocktails? Are there more cocktails coming? There's all these famous people. They're all getting upset. I'm like, I'm so sorry. They're coming. Everybody, we're going to have more cocktails. I find this kitchen. I find these goblets that weigh about 50 pounds each. They're like these very heavy goblets, and I fill them with water. And then
just what a group of people in a cocktail party want.
I figure at least I had something on a tray, and I limp out there like Igor. I can barely carry the tray. These freaking goblets are so heavy. I'm like, would anybody like a water while we're waiting for our cocktails? And so anyway, long story short, after like an hour of people being very upset and not having cocktails, and me going around with giant goblets of water, they opened the doors, and we were able to get back into the swing of things. But Gloria Steinem actually from the stage made a comment about it, and she said, I just want to say there was some misunderstanding that happened, and we have a fabulous catering group here. We have these wonderful bartenders, and they made every effort to get the cocktails to you, but it worked out. It was a little misunderstood there, and we're just grateful and thank you.
So in other words, you got a shout out from Gloria Steinem.
She was just so gracious, you know what I mean? Like, these people were ready to like kick my ass. I was like hiding behind my tray. No, I'm just kidding. But so all's well that ends well, and she was just gracious the whole time. She actually came up and chatted with us at one point.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so jealous.
I know. It was pretty darn cool. Pretty, probably the coolest bartending gig I ever did, I'm going to say.
I would say so, even if they did want to crucify you for not having drinks.
Exactly. But it makes for a good story, at least. I know some of you probably waited tables like I have for a very long time. And I used to have waitressing nightmares a lot where, you're the only one and you have to, wait on everybody in the room and you don't have... But this was truly like a real life waitress nightmare. A true one. So.
Except for that you got to do it at Gloria Steinem's 80th birthday. I'm not feeling sorry for you.
Yeah.
And
I think it was at Sharon Stone's house too, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, shut up.
Somebody can call and tell me I was wrong, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. And she was a friend of Wilma Mankiller.
Do you think Wilma was that? Wait, what year was that? What year did Wilma die? Sorry.
Wilma died in,
2012?
Wilma died in 2010.
2010. No, it was, no. I'm sure Wilma was not there, sadly. But would have been cool.
That would have been very cool. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that would have been so cool.
That's so cool.
That would have been exceptionally cool.
Yes, absolutely. I'm just so glad that you shared her with us today.
Well, I actually shout out to our podcast editor, Dana.
Oh, we love Dana.
Dana actually alerted me to Wilma, and I might not have realized her magnificence. So thank you, Dana.
Thank you, Dana. We love you.
We do love you. Dana Sullivan, our podcast editor.
Speaking of shout outs, we want to give a little shout out to one of our Sheelanagig podcast supporters, and her name is El Ebizada, and she is an amazing coach. And she specializes in helping singles, and her approach guides clients to break free from repeating unhealthy patterns so they can manifest a loving, healthy, compatible partnership. Elle uses laser coaching and focuses on releasing limiting beliefs and emotional blocks through radical self-acceptance work and intuitive wisdom. So we have a special offer. So if you're looking for that soulmate,
yes,
we encourage you to reach out to Elle.
Please,
because she's really awesome. Use code Sheela, SHEELA, as in Sheelanagig. Use code Sheela, and you can receive a free 30-minute discovery Zoom call to help you unlock your love potential.
Ooh.
That's right. So if you want to reach out to Elle, you can do so. You can email her at info@heartcoaching.org. I'm gonna spell that, info at HEART coaching.org. Heart to Heart Coaching.org. That's right. To sign up for your complimentary discovery call today, and don't forget, of course, to mention your code Sheela. And again, that's SHEELA. We wish you lots of luck in your love conquest. And thank you for being here today.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks to April
and Missy
for the man killer Sheela.
The man killer Sheela. That's right.
That's what she is. And thanks everybody for listening. We really appreciate it. Until next time, much love. Sheela, Sheelanagig,